Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about how Kamala Harris has made her decision on who her vice presidential running mate will be, and that is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Definitely a historic choice just because of how unusual really this whole situation has been. So Kamala Harris choosing someone who isn't a national profile, who the vast majority of people don't know. Tim Walz, of course, is the governor of Minnesota. As I said, very different from, say, the governor of New York or the governor of California or Florida or Texas, these bigger states where Americans might have heard about these people in the national news. Tim Walz hasn't done, anything for better or for worse, probably for better, that would get him in the national spotlight. And ultimately, this lack of ambition that Tim Walz has ultimately is what made the Harris camp decide on him. Kamala Harris herself decide on Tim Walz rather than Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Apparently, Josh Shapiro seemed very ambitious, said he wanted to be in on all the decisions being made with Harris. And really seemed like he wanted the number one spot. I mean, there was speculation that after Biden dropped out, that he would run for the Democratic nomination for president rather than vice president. So Josh Shapiro was very ambitious, while Tim Walz said in this vetting interview that he would always be by the vice president's side, and more importantly, he said that he did not want to become president, which is what ultimately made the Harris camp so drawn to Tim Walz. And also, he was very charming and likable during the interview. I mean, he's a very charming and likable guy. If you hear him on stage, it's really hard not to like the guy. So, Tim Walz is the choice. I mean, very unusual, right? It was down to Josh Shapiro and Tim Walz. And then on the short list, you also had Bashir Buttigieg, Mark Kelly, and J.B. Pritzker. But yeah, I mean, just a very unusual choice because, lately, in at least Democratic politics, at least in 2020, remember, Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris because he was an old white man, and he wanted someone who was a little different, an African-American woman who would be able to unite the party, get these more younger liberals or progressives on his side. While this time around, Kamala Harris is now the presidential nominee, taking Joe Biden's position, and the roles have kind of been reversed. Now, Kamala Harris is trying to get someone who is more normal to the American public, who is more like what the American public is used to, that being an old, white, straight man, Tim Walz. And that's why, when you look at this list, all of these finalists, or everyone on the short list at least, are white males. That is why she went with Tim Walz. Kamala Harris is different enough, I believe, for the vast majority of American voters. I mean, she is an African-American woman. She would be the first woman to be president ever. And, of course, obviously, the first African-American woman. So she would be, breaking this glass ceiling by herself and breaking on some sort of other glass ceiling on the vice presidential level. American voters, that would be too much for them. That would be a little too much for them. So even though Tim Walz himself and what he looks like is not, most aligned with progressivism, his record absolutely is. Kyle Kalinske lays out why Tim Walz is, in his opinion, the best governor in the country, but why he is the most progressive governor in the country. I mean, he has done all of this with a one-seat majority in Minnesota. He probably outflanks Bernie Sanders to the left when you look at what he has done. He has gotten universal free school meals. That's where that iconic photo of him with the school children hugging him came from. That's after he signed that into law. They are going to run that in ads, I guarantee you. He legalized marijuana, tax rebates, and then 12 weeks of paid family leave and 12 weeks of paid sick leave. That's huge. Universal background checks on guns. That's huge. And when you look at all this stuff, Trump is going to attack Walz. The Republicans are going to attack Walz for being, radical left, way too progressive for the American public. But what are they going to do? Are they really going to outline what he has actually done in Minnesota, what his record is in Minnesota? Because, yes, he's a progressive, but Americans don't know This is proven time and time again. Americans don't know how progressive they are themselves. Obviously, the vast majority of voters, political or apolitical, Democrat or Republican, they are going to support free food, free lunch for kids in schools. They just are. The vast majority of Americans will support that. In poll after poll, the vast majority of Americans support legalizing marijuana. The vast majority, even more, support 12 weeks or whatever, not necessarily 12 weeks, but paid sick leave, paid family leave, red flag laws for guns. They support that, and universal background checks. The vast majority of people support these policy positions. So while Trump can say that, he can say that all he wants, but it's not going to mean anything to people if he actually doesn't outline things that Tim Walz has done in Minnesota. And if he does, it'll backfire. It won't work because it's things that the American people actually support. So Tim Walz was an excellent pick by Kamala Harris. He's the governor of Minnesota. He is so hard to attack. I mean, the contrast when it comes to attacks between J.D. Vance, who Trump picked to be VP, and him, it's just so stark. I mean, J.D. Vance, you've got all of this about his past, the of course, hillbilly elegy is filled with negative things about him. And then his old Facebook posts and comments, so many things are coming up about his past. Well, if you look at Tim Walz, he was a social studies teacher. He was loved by a school. He was voted, he was voted like the most trusted teacher in his school. I mean, he is just this Midwestern dad. He has no involvement whatsoever in the stock market and trading and cryptocurrency, all stuff like that Congress members and politicians love to get involved in for their own personal gain. I mean, Republicans have nothing on this guy. They have nothing. Donald Trump is just, attacking him because he gave free food as free lunch to school kids in Minnesota. That's the best that they have him in right now, that he's progressive. But again, when you look at all these things, American people agree with it. But, what tab was I on? I don't know. But, what was I but anyway, apparently there was reporting that in the vetting process, the Harris team talking with Tim Walz, the worst thing that was hurting, a potential Tim Walz candidacy was that he had never read off a teleprompter before. That was the worst that was the worst thing about his candidacy. So there is absolutely nothing on this guy. I mean, this is a really, really, really good guy, it seems like. I mean, it seems like he is an honest man. We'll see. Maybe something will come up because it seems like that always happens with these politicians that seem good. So then, also, just talking about the electoral ramifications of this. We've got our electoral map. Of course, Walz is from Minnesota. And, I mean, I don't see why Tim Walz would help in the Sun Belt. I mean, Josh Shapiro, you could say he's better than Josh Shapiro because Shapiro would hurt Kamala turnout among younger voters who don't like his position on Israel. Sure, but still, does Tim Walz add anything to the ticket when it comes to the Sun Belt? I don't think so. I think that Trump will take Nevada. Maybe. I don't know. I'm very torn on Nevada right now. But I guess we'll just give it to him for the purposes of this video. Georgia and North Carolina, I think, still go to him. But I do think that they lock down the Rust Belt. I think that the Rust Belt goes to him. I mean, I was very skeptical about Wisconsin beforehand. I really strongly believe that Michigan would go to the Democrats and Pennsylvania would as well. However, I was very unsure about Wisconsin. Remember, in 2020, it voted for Biden by the least amount of the blue wall states, and in 2016, it voted for Trump by the most amount of the blue wall states. So, Wisconsin, whoops, what just happened? I have no idea. There we go. I made a new window there. But Tim Walz being on the ticket has so much Midwestern and Rust Belt appeal. I mean, this guy will be campaigning around this area. And he just seems like a Midwestern grandpa. He just does. He is so friendly, so likable. If he campaigns, I don't know how he wouldn't, get some, more centrist independents and maybe some moderate Republicans who hate Trump on the Democratic side, convince them to come on board. I think that these these very white, older Republicans or former Republicans who really hate Trump with a passion. Yes, Tim Walz is a progressive, but maybe, just because of his vibe, he could get some of them on the Democratic side. So we'll see. I don't even know if this is my electoral map right now. I think I have Nevada going Democratic, actually, now that I think of it. But I will try to get out a prediction today. And I also wanted to do another debate. Apparently, J.D. Vance is now backing down from the debate, just like Trump. So, yeah, thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe down below. That helps out a lot. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.